The sun had barely risen over Austin when Isabella Cruz, a tired waitress with nothing but a kind heart, walked into her tiny diner, unaware her life was about to change forever. That same morning, she heard a nurse whisper that a dying man needed a kidney, fast. Without hesitation, Isabella signed the papers and offered hers, never asking who he was. But the man she just saved? He wasn't an ordinary patient. He was Liam Hayes, a lonely millionaire CEO who'd built an empire, yet had no one left to live for. A week later, Isabella lay in a dim hospital room, stitches along her side, breathing softly. She didn't want recognition. She didn't want reward, just to go home, heal, and keep working. Across the hall, Liam Hayes opened his eyes for the first time in weeks. He was a man used to control, markets, mergers, destinies, but now his life was saved by someone he'd never met. When his assistant told him the donor was a local waitress, something inside him shifted. The billionaire who'd spent years hiding behind numbers suddenly felt human again. As he regained his strength, he couldn't shake her name from his mind. Isabella Cruz. He decided right then he would find her. Not because he owed her, but because for the first time in his life, he wanted to understand why someone would give so much and ask for nothing in return. Isabella returned to her old life, pouring coffee, scrubbing tables, smiling through fatigue. The diner smelled of burnt toast and rain that night when a stranger in a grey suit walked in. He was quiet, calm, yet his presence filled the room. She didn't recognize him, not at first. When he spoke her name, softly, almost in disbelief, her heart skipped. "You're Isabella." "Right," she nodded. He placed a photo on the counter. Her, unconscious after surgery. The blood drained from her face. You're the patient," she whispered. Liam nodded slowly. "You didn't just give me a kidney," he said. "You gave me back a life I didn't know I'd lost." The air between them changed. A quiet storm of gratitude, disbelief, and something deeper neither could explain. Days turned into quiet weeks, yet something strange began to happen at the little diner. Every evening around the same hour, a man in a grey suit would walk in, sit at the last booth near the window, and order nothing but black coffee. He never spoke much, never smiled, but his eyes followed Isabella, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but like he was searching for something he'd lost long ago. She didn't recognize him, but there was something hauntingly familiar about that face. Sometimes she'd catch him staring at her wrist, where the hospital band had once left a faint mark. He seemed to notice every little thing about her, the way she winced when she lifted a heavy tray, the way her smile hid her exhaustion. It was as if he knew her pain without her saying a word. One night, the diner was nearly empty when the lights flickered, and the man stood up, walking toward her slowly. "Isabella Cruz," he said softly, his voice trembling as if he had rehearsed those words 100 times. Her name on his lips made her heart skip. "Do I know you?" she asked. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a photograph on the counter. A picture of her lying in a hospital bed, pale, tubes attached, barely conscious. The world around her seemed to freeze. Her hands began to shake as she looked up at him. "I think you do now," he whispered, eyes glistening with tears. "You're the one who gave me your kidney." The sound of those words felt unreal, like something out of a dream she didn't remember having. She stared at him, speechless, as his voice cracked. "I owe you my life." That moment shattered the line between two worlds, the struggling waitress and the powerful millionaire who once ruled everything but couldn't buy what she had given him freely. The rain started outside, tapping against the glass, echoing her heartbeat. He smiled faintly, not as a CEO, but as a man who had finally found the person who made him human again. She couldn't find the words, only tears that spoke louder than anything she could say. In that tiny diner, between the smell of coffee and rain, a secret was revealed that neither of them would ever forget. The man she once saved without knowing had come back not just to thank her, but to rewrite the story of both their lives. And from that night on, nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. Weeks later, Isabella stood outside the diner, staring at the new sign that had quietly appeared overnight. Polished wood with gold letters that read, "A Cruiser's Diner, where kindness lives." She never ordered it, never paid for it, but she already knew who had. Liam Hayes had disappeared after that rainy night, leaving behind no number, no card, only the silence of gratitude. But one morning, a letter arrived, sealed in white, with her name written in elegant handwriting. Inside was a single note that said, "You gave me life. Now let me help you live yours." And beneath it, a deed transferring full ownership of the diner to her name. Tears filled her eyes as she sank into the nearest chair, whispering, "Why me?" For the first time she realized that her one act of selfless kindness had started a chain of miracles she never asked for. A few weeks later, she was invited to a charity event hosted by the Hayes Foundation for Organ Donor Awareness. She almost didn't go, afraid of the spotlight. But when she entered the hall, hundreds of people stood and clapped. On the big screen behind her, her story played, her face, her sacrifice, her heart. And then he appeared, Liam Hayes, walking onto the stage in a simple grey suit. No tie, no pretense, just honesty. He looked at her, smiled softly, and said into the microphone, "I've made millions, but none of it could buy what she gave me freely, hope." The crowd went silent, hanging on his every word. "She didn't just save my life," he continued, voice breaking. "She reminded me that the world still has people who give without asking anything back." When he stepped down, he didn't go to the podium or the cameras. He went straight to her. For a moment they stood there, saying nothing. Just two people whose lives had changed because of one choice made from the heart. "Isabella," he whispered, "you gave me a heartbeat, but you also gave me a reason to use it." Her eyes glistened as she smiled through tears. "You don't owe me anything. Liam, just promise you'll live kindly. That's all I ever wanted." And he did. Together, they began a new chapter, opening free clinics, supporting donors, and helping those who thought kindness had no place in the modern world. Every morning, Isabella still worked at the diner, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She'd pour coffee for strangers, greet them with the same smile, never telling them who she really was. Sometimes, when the sun rose and light spilled through the diner's cracked windows, Isabella would pause for a moment, watching the world wake up outside. In the quiet corner booth, Liam would often sit with a gentle smile, his eyes filled with a peace he'd never known before. The clinking of coffee cups, the soft hum of morning chatter, everything felt different now, lighter, warmer, as if life itself had found its color again. They never needed words anymore. Their eyes said everything, gratitude, respect, something deeper than either could name. Two souls from different worlds had crossed paths through one selfless act, proving that destiny doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it whispers in kindness. What began as a sacrifice had become a bond that no amount of wealth or time could measure. Because in the end, Isabella learned the truth her heart had always known. Money can build empires, but love and compassion build eternity. As the city stirred awake outside, she smiled softly to herself and whispered, "If I can save one life, that's enough." Only now she truly understood. She hadn't just saved his life. She had saved her own too,